That's how long I'd stood by her side, through student loans, miscarriages, her mother's cancer, the hard years when I worked double shifts to cover both our bills and her dream of becoming a life coach. And tonight, I came into the restaurant, thinking it was finally a moment for the two of us to breathe, celebrate, reflect. She picked the place, high-end, the kind that makes you feel underdressed even in a suit. I showed up early, had the table prepped with her favorite white lilies, even asked the staff to put a candle in the dessert she liked, creme brulee. Nothing fancy, just familiar, meaningful. She arrived 10 minutes late, floating in like royalty, her wine-red dress hugging her like a secret. I stood up like always, kissed her cheek. She didn't meet my eyes. That should have been my first warning. The kids came too, unexpected, dressed up. Our son didn't even nod hello. Our daughter smiled like she was humoring a stranger. I told myself maybe they were just nervous. Teenagers. Phones glued to their hands, hearts wrapped up in themselves. Appetizers came, then entrees. She barely touched hers. Halfway through the wine, she cleared her throat, clinked the glass. "I want to say something," she said. Her voice carried, just loud enough to quiet the room around us. 15 years is a long time, and tonight, I'm finally free of the man who built this illusion. She pulled out a manila folder. Thick, clean. She slid it across the table to me like it was the check. "Divorce papers," she said, smiling as if she were offering me a gift. My hands didn't move, not right away. I just stared at her. She turned to the kids like it was a toast. "We did it. It's done." My daughter clapped once. My son muttered something under his breath and chuckled. It was all rehearsed, all planned. I opened the folder. Top page had my full name in bold. Respondent. Michael Aaron Kelly. Date. Our anniversary. Section highlighted in yellow. Property division already arranged. Her voice pierced through my fog again. "Everything you own? Now mine. The house, the savings, even your retirement account. You shouldn't have signed everything joint, baby." I looked at her, then at the children. Our children. Neither could meet my eyes. The knife didn't twist all at once. Slid in quiet. Slow. I didn't argue. Didn't raise my voice. Just folded the papers back up and placed them gently beside my plate. "Okay," I said. She blinked. That part maybe she hadn't expected. I took a sip of water, then stood, buttoned my coat. I kissed my daughter on the top of her head and told her she still had my heart, no matter what side she chose. My son stiffened when I reached for his shoulder, so I didn't touch him. Just looked at him and said, "Someday you'll understand." They didn't reply, just stared down at their plates. I walked out into the cold night, leaving the candle flickering on a dessert no one would eat. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I drove around the city until sunrise, the sky cracking open like a quiet warning. The streets were still wet from a late drizzle, glinting under streetlights. I kept looping the same 4 blocks like I was lost, which in every way that mattered, I was. By morning, I pulled into the driveway. My own house looked like a stranger's. Her new car was parked in my spot. The blinds were closed. The porch light was still on. For a moment, I just sat in the truck, staring at the front door, wondering if I should even bother walking through it. But I did. Inside, everything looked untouched. Too perfect, as if someone had staged our life and then quietly stepped out the back. I heard laughter upstairs. Not mine, not hers, the kids. I followed the sound and found them in the hallway, packing bags, matching luggage, tags already labeled. My daughter spotted me first. Her eyes narrowed slightly, like I was interrupting something sacred. "Where are you going?" I asked. She shrugged. Mom's boyfriend has a place in Aspen. We're spending the week. There. I didn't respond to that. My eyes found my son, standing by the staircase with a duffel slung over his shoulder. Can we talk? Asked. Neither answered, but they didn't walk away either. So I continued. Careful, like tiptoeing around glass. I know things are confusing. I know your mom's told you a version of everything, but I'm still your father. I've always tried. My son cut in. You were our father. That stopped me cold. You were just the guy who worked and paid for stuff. He continued, voice low, almost embarrassed. You were barely even here. I was providing. No, my daughter said, arms crossed. You were avoiding. That's not the same. I didn't argue. What was the point? They had made up their minds, and then she said it. The line that gutted whatever was left of me. You're just a sperm donor to us now. The words hung in the hallway like poison in the air. Sharp, meant to hurt. And God, they did. I couldn't move. Not at first. I stared at her like maybe she'd crack, maybe she'd flinch. But she didn't. She just looked through me like I was nothing but drywall. I see, I finally said, nodding once. They turned back to their bags, as if I'd vanished. I walked downstairs in a daze. Each step felt like a countdown. On the kitchen counter was a framed photo. Me holding both of them in Disneyland. Beaming like an idiot, sunburned and proud. I turned it face down without a word. I left the house with nothing but my truck keys and the clothes on my back. I didn't slam the door. Didn't break anything. I just walked out like a ghost who finally understood he wasn't part of the living anymore. I drove for hours after leaving the house. Not sure where I was going. Not sure it even mattered. Gas stations. Empty rest stops. A diner at 3 a.m. where no one looked twice at a man with dead eyes and nothing but time. I slept in the truck for a couple of nights. Windows cracked. Jacket rolled under my head. Gunmetal sky overhead. It was quiet. Finally quiet. On the third morning, I turned back. Not because I wanted to go home. That place wasn't home anymore. But because I had to collect the few things I still cared about. A watch my father gave me. The deed to the land my grandfather left in Alabama. A handful of old letters I'd written to my kids when they were too young to read. Still tucked in a shoebox behind the water heater. I waited until the house was empty. I knew their scheduled school Pilates errands. She ran it all like a machine now. I parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest. The door code hadn't changed. That part hurt more than it should have. Like I didn't even warrant being locked out properly. Inside, the house smelled different. Her perfume, stronger now. Vanilla and rot. I moved quietly, room to room. My closet had already been emptied. Half of it taken. Half boxed and pushed. To the corner, like leftovers from someone else's life. I didn't open the boxes, just grabbed the one good suit I had left and tossed it on the bed. Next, the nightstand, passport, charger, wallet. I didn't look at the bed too long. I already knew it didn't remember me. Downstairs, I packed the letters. The old family pistol, unloaded and oiled, wrapped in a towel. My father's watch still ticking, though the glass was cracked. I held it in my palm for a while. It was the only thing in that house that still felt honest. On the fridge was a note in her handwriting. Groceries for Aspen trip. Don't forget to feed Midnight. He's your responsibility now. Midnight, our old mutt, the only one who still came when I called his name. I found him in the laundry room. Tail wagged once, then again, slower, as he leaned into my leg like he remembered. I clipped on his leash and grabbed the last bag. Just a duffel. No suitcase, no fanfare. No one saw me leave. I didn't say goodbye. Not to the neighbors, not to the mailman, not to the house. Midnight sat in the passenger seat, eyes on the window like he knew we weren't coming back. I didn't leave a note, didn't slam the door, didn't make a speech. Sometimes, the most powerful thing a man can do is walk away without asking for permission. So I did. Midnight, and I drove west until the sky changed color. We stopped at a rental cabin, tucked along a ridgeline in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Old wood, no neighbors, no cell signal. Perfect. I paid cash and left no forwarding address. The man at the front desk didn't ask questions, just handed me a key and pointed toward the trees. The dog adjusted faster than I did. He slept by the dar at night and followed me on long, quiet hikes during the day. I didn't talk much. Didn't need to. For the first time in a long time, no one expected anything from me. No one needed me to pretend. A week passed. I didn't watch the news, didn't check social media, but I knew enough. She thought I was gone for good. And that's exactly what I wanted her to believe. In my absence, they celebrated. Photos surfaced, not on my accounts. I was locked out of those. But through mutual friends, old co-workers, distant relatives who hadn't picked sides yet, a housewarming party at the mansion, champagne flutes, a new beginning banner strung across a marble fireplace I paid for. She wore a white cocktail dress and a fake grin. He, the new man, the one who used to be her co-worker, stood beside her in a tailored suit, arm around her waist like he'd won something. My children were there too, dressed like props in a brochure for rich, happy families. My son raised a toast. My daughter kissed her mother's cheek in front of everyone. They called it a rebirth, a victory, a clean slate. I called it a countdown. Because while they were sipping wine in their glass palace, they didn't know the foundation had already started to crack. You see, before I left that house, I didn't just take my duffel and my dog. I also took the safe key. Inside that safe had been the original marriage contract, notarized documents about joint investments, and most importantly, the post-nuptial agreement. She forgot we ever signed back when she had an affair 10 years ago and begged me not to walk. I never tore it up, never voided it, just filed it away with a quiet promise to myself. If she ever makes me the villain again, I won't play fair. I'll play smart. That document, along with copies of asset transfers she made behind my back and emails she sent using my credentials, had already been turned over to a lawyer friend of mine in South Carolina, retired Army JAG. The kind of guy who knows how to make the ground quake without making a sound. I didn't need to shout. Didn't need to show up uninvited or cause a scene at their fake fairy tale launch. All I had to do was wait. So while they toasted to my erasure and posted selfies in front of my fireplace, I was sipping black coffee on a splintered porch, flipping through old legal files by lamplight. Every move measured. Let them think they'd won. Let them believe I was licking, wounds somewhere with a broken heart. The trap had already been set. The fuse had already been lit, and the next thing they'd hear from me wouldn't be a cry or a complaint. It would be a courier. On the morning of the 8th day, the trap was sprung. I didn't need to be there to see it. I could picture every second of it in my mind, right down to the way her smile would vanish. The courier arrived just before noon. A clean-shaven young guy in a tailored charcoal suit, clipboard in hand, envelope under his arm. Professional, unbothered. The kind of man who doesn't flinch at luxury or arrogance. He rang the bell twice. Security cameras caught it all. That's how I saw the footage later, forwarded to me by my attorney with the subject line, "She's officially speechless." She answered the door herself, hair still wet from the pool, silk robe, tied tight around her waist, sunglasses on. She probably thought it was another delivery. Flowers, maybe? Or something she ordered to decorate her new life. He handed her the envelope and asked her to sign. She didn't even read the label. But the moment she opened it, her expression cracked. It wasn't just one document. It was a stack. Neatly tabbed, color-coded, prepared by the kind of lawyer who didn't lose, At the top was a motion for injunctive relief. Then came the asset freeze order. Then the post-nup agreement she had signed 10 years ago, now reactivated and enforceable under Clause 14b. It stated clearly that any extramarital behavior followed by divorce would forfeit her right to joint ownership of property, accounts, and future spousal support. And the best part? It was her idea. She'd written it into the contract when she was desperate to keep me back then. Thought I'd never remember. She tried to argue that I'd let it slide. She even laughed about it once. Now it was the noose. But that wasn't all. Enclosed was documentation, showing she'd used my name to transfer investment funds without consent, technically identity fraud. Also included an affidavit from the original notary who confirmed the validity of her signatures. And finally, a cease and desist letter addressed to her new partner, warning him that any use of shared real estate, including the mansion, would now be considered trespassing. By sunset, the bank accounts were frozen. By midnight, the keys to the mansion no longer worked. And by morning, my lawyer had filed for full financial restitution, plus damages, retroactively dating to the moment. She served me the divorce papers at that dinner. Her new partner, Mr. Aspen Dreams, had apparently been under the impression that everything she claimed to own was clean and clear. It wasn't. The deed to the mansion was still tied to a trust in my name, a trust she never bothered to unravel. The cars were leased under our joint marital status. The credit cards, all in my name, and now officially canceled. He panicked first. Within an hour of reading the legal documents, he was seen storming out of the driveway in his white BMW, shouting into his phone. A neighbor recorded the whole thing. Apparently, he called her a liability in heels before peeling off down the street. The party was over. The house of cards they built on my back collapsed without warning. No fire, no scream, just the cold, hard slap of legal truth. Back at the cabin, I didn't smile, didn't gloat, just poured myself another cup of black coffee, leaned back in the wooden chair, and let the silence settle. They thought I was weak because I walked away. What they never understood was that walking away was the first move, not the last. The next morning, the silence broke. I was sitting on the porch of the cabin, the mug warm in my hand, the dog dozing at my feet. A crow cawed once from the pines. Then my phone, which I hadn't touched in days, began to vibrate. Blocked number. I let it ring once, twice. On the third, I answered. At first, I thought it was static. But then came the sobbing. Dad. Dad, please. Dad. You have to. Something's happening. It was my daughter. Her voice cracked so hard it barely sounded like her. I could hear panic behind her words, a kind of raw confusion that only comes when the world starts crumbling too fast to understand. They're at the house, she screamed. People in suits, some kind of lawyer or police or, I don't know. They're taking things. Mom's yelling, and Rick left, and nobody's telling us what's going on. I said nothing, just listened. Let her spill. It out like poison she tried to keep down for too long. They shut down the bank accounts. All of them. Mom says you did this. Did you? Is this you? Why are you doing this to us? I waited a beat. Then another. My voice was calm. Dead calm. I didn't do anything to you, I said. You made your choice. I'm just letting you live with it. She went quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't mean silence. It means comprehension. Like a door creaking open inside her head for the first time. We didn't know, she whispered. I did, I replied. But we're your children. Not that night at the donor. Not when you packed bags for Aspen before my side of the bed was even cold. But she told us. She told you what you wanted to hear. And you believed it because it was easier than asking me. I could hear her breathing hard, trying to form words. Please, she finally said. Can we talk? In person. I need Dad. I'm scared. There was a time when that sentence alone would have shattered me. When hearing my daughter say the word scared would have had me across the country in 5 hours flat. But not anymore. That man, the one who would have died for their comfort, he died at that anniversary dinner. Now there was only clarity. "You'll be fine," I said, voice even. "You've still got the mansion, right?" "Dad?" "No, wait, sorry. You don't. Why are you being like this?" I stood slowly, stretching my back. Midnight lifted his head and watched me, waiting. "I'm not being anything," I said. "I'm just done. That's all." "But we're family." "No, you had a family, and you burned it to the ground, for a man you barely know, and a woman who forgot what loyalty means." Tears on the other end now, quiet and messy. She tried again, softer. "I miss you." I looked out at the woods, at the sky rising over the ridge. "No, sweetheart," I said. "You miss what I used to do for you." She didn't argue. Maybe because she couldn't. Maybe because she knew it was true. Then came the last question, the one I knew was coming. "Is there any way we can fix this?" I didn't pause. Didn't blink. No. Silence. And then, gently, almost like a mercy kill, "You chose your side. Now live with it." And I hung up. The wind moved through the trees like applause. Not loud, not dramatic. Just enough to let me know the moment was over. I turned the phone off and tossed it on the porch table beside the coffee mug. Behind me, Midnight stood up, ready for our walk. We went into the woods together, me and the only soul that hadn't turned its back on me. The phone never rang again. Not from her, not from my son, not from their mother. I knew why. Once the dust settled, the shock gave way to shame. Or maybe it was just the lawyers advising them to shut up before they made it worse. The fallout came fast. 3 days after the call, I got a quiet update from my attorney. Bennett, a man of few words and iron timing. "It's done. She's exposed. Everything's unraveling." That's all he wrote. But the details followed, slow and surgical. It started with the real estate fraud. Turns out, she'd forged my initials on a transfer document for the mansion, falsely claiming I'd relinquished all to the property. The notary listed had no record of ever witnessing the signature. Her story unraveled under oath. The court froze the house immediately, locked it down like a crime scene. Her little kingdom, all marble and crystal, now stood silent, dead space with furniture too expensive to touch. A court-appointed trustee showed up the next morning to take inventory. She wasn't allowed to remove a single item, not even a pair of shoes. Her bank accounts were next. Joint accounts? Closed. Her personal savings? Tied up in litigation. Even the secret accounts she thought I didn't know about, one in her sister's name, another in her lover's company, were exposed and frozen due to probable fraud and misrepresentation. The IRS got involved. Apparently, someone hadn't reported. 6 figures in gifts she received from her new man while still married. Bad move, especially when that money was used to buy vehicles and luxury goods still technically under my name. She tried to shift blame, first to me, then to Rick, the boyfriend. But Rick, faced with mounting civil liability and whispers of criminal exposure, didn't stick around. He bailed out of the relationship faster than he bailed out of the driveway, the day the envelope hit the porch. My daughter messaged once more. Just one word, sorry. No punctuation. No follow-up. I didn't respond. I wasn't interested in confessions made under pressure. Let them feel it. Let them sit in the echo of what they'd done. Every smirk at that restaurant. Every smug glance across the table. Every insult they thought would never come back to haunt them. The court awarded me restitution. It wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about record. About making sure the truth had teeth. She was forced to liquidate her business. The so-called coaching empire she'd built while married to me, now proven to have used joint funds without proper disclosure, was shut down. Her clients vanished. Her reputation crumbled in slow motion, whispers of fraud chasing her like smoke from a fire. And the house? Sold at public auction. I didn't attend. Didn't need to. I heard a neighbor bought it, gutted it, and flipped it. For profit. Good. Let someone else bleach the memories from those walls. Through it all, I stayed out of the spotlight. Never gave an interview. Never gloated. I just let the machine I'd set in motion do its work. They thought I was a ghost. But no ghost leaves paperwork behind. The last message I received from anyone, tied to that life, came 2 weeks after the court ruling. It wasn't from her. It wasn't from my kids. It was from her lawyer. My client requests a final conversation for the sake of closure. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Closure wasn't something she could request from me anymore. It was something I earned the moment I stepped out of that house with one bag and a dog and never looked back. By then, I had already moved deeper into the woods. Farther from the roads, farther from memories. I bought a small, weathered cabin near the coast. Nothing fancy. A tin roof. A chimney that creaked when it rained. The air smelled like salt and pine. I rebuilt the deck with my own hands. Hung shelves. Split firewood until my muscles remembered how to burn. Midnight loved it. He ran like a pup again, tail high, chasing gulls and shadows across the wet sand. There were no more lawyers. No more phone calls. No more requests. Just the rhythm of a life no one else owned. In the mornings, I'd wake up before the sun, brew a pot of coffee on the old stove, and sit on the porch watching the tide pull in slow and honest. No courtrooms. No betrayal. No voices asking me to forget what couldn't be forgiven. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel bitter. I didn't need revenge anymore. It had already happened. Not because I struck back, but because I walked away before they even saw the match in my hand. They thought they took everything. But they left me with the one thing that mattered. Silence. And in that silence, I found something better than forgiveness. I found peace. The days started to blend, not in a blur, but in rhythm, like waves repeating their promises. Morning coffee, a walk along the beach with midnight. Afternoon spent fixing the porch swing, sanding driftwood into shapes that didn't have to mean anything. No one asking questions, no one needing answers. I didn't check the news. If there were stories about her downfall blogs, gossip pages, court updates, I didn't read them. I wasn't interested in headlines about pain I already knew too well. That chapter was closed. I got a letter once. Handwritten. No return address. But the handwriting was familiar. My daughter's. Stayed sealed. Tucked between pages of a book I didn't plan on finishing. Some things are better left unread. Words don't undo silence. Not this kind. Occasionally, I'd walk into town for supplies. There was a woman who ran the general store. Gray hair, sharp eyes, called everyone sugar, like she meant it. She didn't know my story. Just asked if I wanted paper or plastic. That was enough. One afternoon, a storm rolled in fast. Heavy rain pounded the roof. Wind howled through the trees. I built a fire, made stew in the cast-iron pot, and sat by the window while midnight curled at my feet. The cabin groaned but held strong. That's what peace is, I've learned. Not the absence of pain, just the absence of people who profit from it. I had spent 15 years pouring everything I had into a life I thought was ours. Turns out it was just rented space in someone else's dream. But this place, this silence, this land beneath my feet, this was mine. I don't miss them. Not the wife who smirked across the table with divorce papers in hand. Not the son who couldn't look me in the eye. Not the daughter who weaponized my love and then called me when it broke. I don't hate them either. Hate is just another tether. and I cut all the cords. Now, when I sit outside and watch the sun burn its way into the sea, there's no ache, just breath, just stillness. Midnight shifts beside me, sighing like he understands. We made it. Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story makes this one look like a fairy tale.